Hi, my dear friends. Really quickly, I'm going to show you how you can use a very basic parameter on your Tableau worksheet. To start, let me give you some high-level details about the difference between a parameter and filter. Although I'm providing this demo on the assumption that you already have some basic conceptual understanding of how Tableau works when it comes to different levels of details. So the parameters and filters are very important to understand in terms of being able to interact with your data and narrow down your data, and also to be able to use calculation fields or even actions through filtering or through parameter channels. But the most important differences between these two features in Tableau is that the parameters have more interactivity. They can be developed further to have additional interactivities, while filters are only used for narrowing down data, just like you would use filter in an Excel tool or a spreadsheet tool that you use it to filter down on data. The second most important thing is that using parameter, you can actually embed or implement calculated fields onto onto a parameter, but with filters you can do it. Filter is very basic. The third important thing is dependency on a data source. Filters are dependent on a data source. So when you run a filter, you're talking to the actual data source, while parameters are independent. They don't rely. So it's parameter interactions are much faster than filter interactions. The fourth reason is the multi-selection capability. In a filter, filter is good in terms of allowing multi-selection capability, while parameter is limited in that case. In parameters, you cannot use multi-selections. And last but not the least is the action. So with parameters, you can again deploy actions, just like you can deploy calculation fields into your parameter. But with the filters, you cannot use actions, or you cannot add action commands or action triggers onto your filter. These were some of the very high level details in terms of what could be what the basic differences are between these two very important features in Tableau. I'm going to this in this video. I'm going to really quickly show you how you can create a very basic parameter using a connection with a calculated field. But that's not it, because uh, the the uh, the usage or applicability or application of parameter is very broad, that you can use it in a lot of ways and for a lot of purposes. But I'm going to start it from a very basic calculation. So let's so always remember, before you do anything, before you do your create your calculation field, create a parameter. So to create a parameter, simply just come to onto your data pane, and then create on the worksheet, and then click on create parameter. There are also other ways you can get to it, but this is the fastest way. Once you click on create parameter, you're taken to this box here. So this box is going to ask you for a couple of questions. The first question is a name, so you can just name your parameter. Let's say emergency severity, and that's one of our variables, one of our fields here that we'd like to establish a parameter on. And so it's going to ask you what the data type is going to be. So here's where you're going to designate that, and you should make sure that this corresponds with the data type that you're going to build a parameter on. So in this case, it's a ABC. That tells us it's a string or a dimension string variable. So you can either click float, or you can just click, or you can click string. So either one will work. So string or float. So once you select that, it's going to ask you what the current value would be. You can leave that for the end of it because first you need to add the values before you um, assign the current value. So there's the very important thing is um, adding values to your parameter. So there are a couple of ways to do this, and a couple of important things to understand here. First one is that you can add values to your parameter, but you'll need to make sure that the values you're adding here corresponds exactly the values that are on that field. So in this case, all the variables, all the values in this variable need to correspond, need to match the value that you're going to put in here. So in that case, we have three values on the emergency severity. We have low, um, low. We have sorry, low, and once you open the create parameter box, there are a couple of important information that you need to know before anything. First of all, give your parameter a name that you can actually revert back to when you need to make edits or when you need to adjust it later on. So don't just use random parameter one, parameter two, parameter three, especially as you'll be expanding or improving, bigger advanced dashboards. I suggest to consolidate all of your parameter calculated values in categories and by the sort of organized naming conventions that would allow you to easily go back and retrieve them. So in this case, the parameter that I'm going to build on, the variable I'm going to build this parameter on is going to be emergency severity variable or column field name here. So I'm just going to call this emergency severity parameter. And the second thing is the data type. So it's going to ask you what the data type we're going to be. And so it gives you a variety of options here. As you can see, the emergency severity field or variable here is of course, a dimension variable. Why? Because as you can see, the color is blue. And it's also a string variable because it has, I know, because I created that data. It has this emergency severity, and it has these three categories of low, medium, and serious. So that tells us that this is a string variable. So you can go ahead and click on string. And the next thing is it's going to ask you what you want the current value to be. You can just disregard that until the end. Very importantly, you need to understand that there are two ways for you to input your values here. One of the ways is for you to write your values if you know them, or the other way is to import your values. In this case, if you know your values on that field or variable that you're going to build a parameter around, then you can start typing them. In our case, I know it's low, it's a medium, and then it's serious. And by the way, I forgot to mention that I'm using a dummy data set, a fabricated data set, just for the sake of just practice that I will be using later on to create a dashboard. But so don't rely too much on these categories for health emergencies. So yeah, low, medium, and serious. And so these are the values, and these are very important to correspond with the values on the data field. But the display as value, these are just masked, so they could be anything. They don't have to match the actual values on the field. So this is why Tableau allows you the option that although value having the correct value is important to match the value on the actual field that you're going to connect it to through parameter, but display as also allows you to be able to give it a different name other than what you have. So there you go. Now we just created our parameter, and now we can actually designate what we want our current value to be. So maybe we can say current value is pretty much when the parameter is established, what you want that value to be each time that parameter is there. So let's say we want it to be on low, so it's not a big deal. And then value when the workbook opens, the current value. So when the workbook opens, you want the current value and you want the current value to be low. So we just create our list and we're ready to create this parameter. But remember, I'm going to come back and create another parameter using a fixed list. So right now, let's just create this one. Bingo. So as soon as you create this parameter, as you can see, I already have two other parameters built here for date variables. As you can see, the colors are green here because these are measures. Actually, the measures are integers on the parameter, although it says date. But this parameter, which I just created, has the coloring of blue. So what does that tell you? That tells you that this is a discrete or a dimension parameter where the variable is a character value. So the parameter is now created. Next thing you need to do is create a calculated field. So the calculated field is very important because it's actually the holder of your parameter. That's how your parameter is going to talk to your data through the calculation field. And that's where the applicability of parameter becomes so useful because while filters can't talk to the calculation fields, parameters can talk to the calculation fields and expand your reach in terms of what you want to do. So let's just name this emergency security calc. Again, I always advise that when you these labelings for your variables in Tableau, overall, especially in Tableau, because sometimes you end up creating hundreds of calculation fields or sets or those secondary covariables, then you need to have standard or organized naming convention that can allow you to go back and edit and retrieve those variables. So once you give the name, you're going to tell Tableau that this is going to be first you're going to put your emergency severity parameter. You're going to tell that the parameter equals the the field. So you're going to say each time I edit the parameter, then it should equal this. And if it equals that value that the parameter selects, then I want that data to appear on the sheet. So the field that we're going to connect the parameter to is emergency severity. So emergency severity. And there you go. So the logic is very simple. So the logic is the parameter equals this field, and then you click on OK. Again, this is I'm starting at the very basic calculation-based parameter in this video, but I'll have additional videos. We will be diving deep into more robust calculation-based parameters and nested logical parameters. And click on OK. There you go. As you can see, it has the equal sign, which tells us that it's a calculation field. And you also see we have a TNF, which tells us that it's a dichotomy, a Boolean variable. And that, there are two values in here. Either this severity category equals to this or not. Simple as that. So now that you created your parameter and your calculation field, you're ready to create now. Now you're ready to bring your data onto the worksheet. So however you do it doesn't matter, but remember that you have a filtering parameter ready that that will be able to interact with that sheet. So let's just bring emergency severity here. So as you can see, you have low, medium, and serious. And then let's bring number of patients. So there's a number of patients across these three categories of emergency severity. So once we have this tabulation created, now let's plug in the parameter. So you right click on the parameter and you click on show parameter. Oops. There you go. So here's the point now. When you interact with the parameter, it's not going to change anything here. Look, low, medium, serious, nothing. There's no interaction. There's no interaction between the parameter and the actual data. Why? Because the calculations field is not the channel, is not the bridge. The bridge hasn't been established yet. So the parameter without the bridge is useless. So therefore, you should bring your calculation field onto your filter, because that's where you're going to tell Tableau that you want to create a filter based on this calculation, but then you don't want a filtering feature, instead you want a parameter feature to talk to that calculation field, if it makes sense. So then click on true, because what this is going to do is going to tell Tableau to bring the logical value when it's true. So when these dates are equal. So when this severity parameter, severity parameter category equals to this. So we want you to bring us those values that are true. So click on apply and then OK. And there you go. Right away, you see that the parameters started to work. So let's say we go from serious to medium, 54, medium to low, 85. So that's how we know that the parameter is working. So the second parameter I'm going to show you is using the fields that are already there to import them onto your parameter. So let's go to create parameter, and this time let's use service type. And service type is this variable right here. So I know it's a string variable, service type right here. So I know it's a string variable, so we're going to click on string, and then we're going to click on list. So once we do that, we're not going to write all the values, and sometimes you don't remember all the values. So these are the values: internal, cardio, gastro. So instead, we're going to tell the parameter to import them onto the value list. So where is it? Service type. Service type right there. As you can see, all the values are important here. So we don't have to type them. And again, display as allows us to be able to add anything else, other than what the value says. And so let's say if you want to change cardio to cardio XXX, just for the sake of this practice. And you would see later that this addition of this display mask or display value will have no effect, whatsoever on the actual connection between the parameter and the variable. So we just imported it here all the values here, and we're ready to create this parameter as well. And then click on OK. So next thing, just like the calculation field that we just created for the other one, let's go create a calculation field. Now let's call this service type calc, and same thing, emergency. Service type. Service type parameter equals to service type. And remember, parameters are always in. Parameters always in. Parameters are color coded in purple, and calculated fields are always colored in orange. Color coded in orange color. So there you go. This calculation field is also created now. Go ahead and create it. There you go. So just like the other tabulation, let's create a tabulation here. Let's bring service type here on the rows, and now let's just bring in the measure variable here now. There you go. And lastly, let's bring the parameter onto the canvas. I'm sorry, service type parameter. And same thing. Castro. Oh, we forgot to bring the service type calculation. Same thing. Click on true. Apply. Okay. There you go. We now have our parameter functioning, established and functioning. And also, as you can see, the value, the display value that we assigned it does not have no effect on the actual value that talks to the variable. Cardio axis cardio. Right. Thank you for your time. Please look for my other videos where I'll be providing additional details about parameters. This is a very important subject in Tableau. Thank you. Until next time.